but got too nervous to do it. I do remember, however, there was this one situation that had happened at a dance one time where a legend in our grade, a man who goes by not that many names, had gotten up on stage, took the mic, and broke the awkward tension by singing his heart out on the stage. And boy, oh boy, did he have a lot of voice cracks. A man who goes by not that many names, but many had gotten up on stage. And to that guy, I commend your act of bravery, sir. You will never be forgotten. There is, however, a bright side to this story, as there definitely were times where I would eventually dance with a girl, and it would be quite nice. Fun, even. And the best part was, it felt right. The thing is, we're all awkward growing up. Cringy, even. And chances are, if you're feeling uncomfortable,
Mom, I'm butt naked and I keep repeating the same hour over and over again.
It's a phenomenon known as...
Recently I created a video where I coloured in this artwork using $0 pencils that I got for free from a cafe. But that was fun and it was an interesting challenge, but it got me thinking, I wonder what that piece would look like if it was reproduced using 20 Swiss art pencils valued at $80.
Just like they do on BuzzFeed.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and today I'm going to be directly comparing these crappy $0 pencils against these Swiss art pencils I bought from an art store in Paris, France, when I was over there on holiday with my family in the middle of last year. These cheap ones were of course thrown to us with a colouring piece of paper for my son to have a play with, while on the other hand I carefully chose these coloured pencils while testing them against a whole bunch of different brands, and I picked the one that I really liked how they showed and how they felt to use. It was a bit of an extravagant purchase, I'll admit, but I was on holiday in Paris. I had just been to the Louvre. I was excited and inspired, and I had a little bit of spending money. So this is what I ended up with as a result of trying a whole bunch of different brands, and I really loved how they felt. And when I did this art challenge with these pencils, I really wanted to know what it would look like if I did the exact same piece using the expensive ones. But before we jump to that, I'm going to do a few different tests just so you can directly compare them pencil to pencil. For my first direct comparison, I used the black pencil to create a gradient from the outside edges of a circle to a faded inner area of the circle. I try and make the outside edges of the gradient as strong and bold as I possibly can, and as you can see with the cheap pencil, it struggles to get the lead actually down on the paper. I have the opposite problem with the expensive pencil, where the lead is so malleable and soft it goes on the paper without me really putting much effort into it. So I start off by very, very lightly creating my gradient and then slowly coming back to add some darkness to the outer edges. As you can see, the contrast between the results in this comparison is pretty stark. For my next little test, I create another gradient from one color going into a gradient from another. So I start off with blue on the left side and gradient into an orange or golden yellow on the right. The faded part of the gradients cross over in the middle and should blend to create a bit of a mix between the two colors, touching in on a green spectrum but mostly fading in and transitioning between the two tones. It's a pretty seamless transition with the cheap pencils, but again, it's difficult to get them to blend in the middle. With the expensive pencils, once again, we get some really strong bold colors, and the blending in the middle is much nicer. You can see you can actually get the color to go down and on top of other color that you've already drawn, which is one of the most important aspects of the blending of the pencils. Next, I did a little bit of a saturation test where inside a small circle I draw with a red cheap pencil first, pressing as firmly and creating as flat and solid a color as possible. Once again, the result when compared to my expensive pencils obviously speaks for itself. For my final test, I play with a few comparable colors on what is called mid-tone paper. This is where you have paper that's sort of a mid-brown tone as opposed to a pure white, and of course, as you would have expected, the colors of the cheap pencils are much harder to get to show on this mid-tone paper as opposed to the expensive pencils. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about the benefits of using mid-tone paper for illustration, make sure to check out Will Terrell's channel. I'll put a link into a search term in the description so you can see the videos he's done on mid-tone drawing. Suffice it to say that essentially if you're drawing characters on mid-tone paper, you don't have to work as hard to get the saturation of skin or hair and things like that because it's already got that brown tone. So it's cool in a few ways. You save on your materials because you're not trying to work as hard to get those natural mid-tone saturations. It's also a funky sort of naturalistic aesthetic for a sketchbook, and of course the whites and lighter colors really pop out in a way that they don't really on white paper. So with our little tests out of the way and a pretty clear idea as to where these pencils stand in their capabilities, it's time to attempt to recreate the challenge piece I worked on recently. But this time I'll be using a brand of pencils so fancy I can't even pronounce them. Luminance Karen Dache. Karen Dachi. This time I'll be using the Luminance Karen Dachi. So jumping straight into it, I start off by creating a really plain flat area of colour for the grass, which I'll come in and add some gradients and tone variation to later. The first thing I noticed when filling full colour in on this piece compared to the other time that I did this piece is the way I hold the pencil, in particular when filling in broader areas of colour as flat as possible, is quite back on the pencil, and it's really useful having that full length pencil to really lightly fill in the areas with broad strokes and rapid motion. Once I've finished a single layer in a light green, I go over again, this time in different directions just to make sure that the pencil stroke directions don't show very clearly, and then to fill in all the little nooks and crannies in the path area where the grass is also going to be. The next stage is where the fancy pencils really shine, in particular the mixing of colours, mixing in a bit of a golden green, and then of course going back to my mid-tone green and then a darker green to create some gradients in the green areas of the piece to really help bring out the contrast and to really vary the tone in the illustration, which adds a lot of interest and a lot of appeal. Simply put, this is the major difference between the cheap and the expensive pencils. The colours mix and they lay on top of each other really well, and you can create much smoother tones and blends of colours and gradients than you can with cheap pencils. The wood of the tree is a shining example of this, where in the cheap variation of the piece, I was forced to use all of my resources just to try and come up with a brown with the limited colour palette I had available. However, because with my fancy pencils, aside from them being good at blending, I also have a wider variety of colour, so I started off with a slightly desaturated mid-tone brown, then I worked in some highlights in a much more golden brown, and then my shadows and darker areas with a much warmer, almost maroon toned brown pencil, really rich sort of mahogany look. All of these tonal variations used in conjunction with one another and blended together add a lot of visual interest and appeal to the piece, much more so than it would be if it was just done with a flat brown. And as you can see when doing the same thing on the roof of the house, it's the fact that these pencils blend so well with each other and create such a rich level of saturation that makes them more useful and versatile than cheap pencils. The door is another very clear example of this, where it wasn't difficult to create a very rich red door, where in the other piece that was quite a struggle. Colouring in the stonework of the little cottage was also much more straightforward, where in the other piece I used a black pencil and just worked on it very lightly. When you're working with a grey pencil, you can put down much more lead, which ends with a result that looks more solid and clean. And then also because the lead is more malleable, I can go in and add some shadows under the roof and in the interconnecting areas of the brickwork. The smaller details of the piece, from the saturation of the roses to the gradients in the stones on the ground, have much more impact and are much more effective when coloured in using these fancy pencils. And then last but certainly not least, colouring in the sky was a really fun process. I could get a much stronger level of saturation. So the sunset had a lot more impact, going from the golden horizon all the way to a really rich, deep, dark blue sky up in the top. And then because the colours go down easily and blend well together, adding little highlights like gold or orange on the edge of the cabin stand out a lot more and are much more effective. Okay, it's time for the grand reveal. This, again, is the piece that I did with the crappy pencils, and this is the piece that I did with my non crappy pencils. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, Jazza, we're really surprised that the $0 pencils aren't as rich and beautiful and colorful as the fancy pencils. Obviously, you weren't in for a surprise in this video. They are way more capable and you can get so much more saturation and color. They mix really well and the textures are just gorgeous. The point of this video wasn't to surprise you. It was really just to compare. I was just curious. And here they both are under the exact same light, directly next to each other, and with the exact same creation approach. I wanted to make the same thing. But it is worth noting though that even though the $0 pencils don't get the same effect as the fancy schmancy Swiss pencils I bought in France, it still got a nice effect, and I gotta say, it holds up. It's actually not that bad. Some might actually prefer the image on the left done with the cheap pencils because it has a soft pastel sort of feel, a really nice aesthetic that could be quite appealing for some approaches. And then of course the expensive pencils would be more appropriate and more powerful for a lots of different things, in particular fine arts or getting very near reproductions of a specific piece of art. So in our cheap pencils challenge, the moral of the story was you don't need a lot of money and stuff to make pretty art. I guess the moral of this video is it's nice to have more tools to your disposal, but art is art, and at the end of the day, fun with art is just as important as the tools you use to create art with. Anyways, that's it for this video. Before I go, I just want to plug Bailey J's shop one more time. That's where I got the picture that you saw in this video. If you go to her website, baileyj.com, you can see she has a coloring page with all of these free coloring images that you can take and practice and have fun with, and she has a shop and a bio and artwork and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. So check her out. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and maybe leave a comment with a suggestion for a different comparison head-to-head sort of video you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and until next time, I'll see you later.
Make sure to subscribe to my channel to see more of my videos. And while you're at it, check out my shop where I sell ebooks, brushes, photo references, video courses, and more. There's another video you might enjoy from my channel over there, and you can also check out my behind the scenes daily vlog channel, Daily Jazza. That's it for now, and until next time, I'll see you later.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and I thought it'd be fun today to take a trip back in time to the time when I found my passion for art. For those of you who don't know, I am sort of an art hoarder, so I have kept every artwork I've made since I was like 11 years old, and this is a pile of my best artworks that I was super proud of when I was about 12 years old. Now that being said, looking back through these, I remember a lot of these were actually almost directly copied off of other things. I remember sort of taking the jokes from other places, so I was kind of plagiarizing. I also remember there was a little bit of copying involved. Not direct copying, but at least some heavy reference usage. This one was an original character. This was not original. Not only not original characters, obviously, because it's Dragon Ball Z Super Saiyans. I think this was traced. Yeah, this was traced. This one was original. This was like an original alien character I came up with and gave him some, I don't know, quips. Just how I like him. Medium rare. I guess I came up with some freaky monster characters too. This is another one of those pieces that again was heavily referenced. I actually did, and again this one, yeah, I actually did a lot of copying, not direct copying, but sort of using poses and elements from pieces that inspired me. Honestly, when developing artists sort of ask me if there's something wrong with copying, I say copying's fine because you actually pick up little things that you learn. As long as you're not putting it out there and claiming you made it and invented it, copying and using references heavily is great, but just, yeah, don't plagiarize and say you made it up. Here's an example. Obviously, this was very heavily referenced from a certain Dragon Ball Z villain. This was referenced from a Deadpool comic I once saw. I had no idea who Deadpool was, and I obviously had no idea what anatomy was either. Wow. This was a portrait I did of my year 7 class, putting people in horrible stereotyped categories. I guess that's how I saw myself, and I guess Jennifer was sick of my bullshit. And I guess Laura was new at school. And I guess Kim and Sarah were total nerds. And apparently Melissa had a reputation for being strong. Here's another piece which is heavily referenced and inspired by Warhammer 40k, which again, I didn't even know what it was. I just knew I saw pictures of that sort of stuff and really liked it and tried to draw my own versions of stuff. This piece seems to be sort of more original. I guess I was going for like a dramatic scene with some knight character and some magic character. You can tell that the themes I picked to draw that excite me haven't changed all that much in the last 15 years. And with that being the case, this is the piece I'm most drawn to recreate because I feel like I want to do a really cool version of this, or at least, you know, an updated version. What can 27-year-old Jazza make with this? Alright, so let's do it. This is what I'm assigning myself. The recreation of these generic medieval characters that are trying to do something dramatic and cool. Let's do it. So here we are back on the 2001 artwork that I made when I was about 12 years old. And having used exactly the same materials, the fine liner and the pencils, this is my modern recreation, which I'm really happy with, and I feel like encapsulates the, I don't know, almost the facial designs of the characters, which I was satisfied with. There was sort of like a sneer, pompous look about this character that I wanted to carry across, and obviously we have those glowing eyes and the blonde hair of this other character. Now there are obvious differences, and I had to sort of reconfigure some of the clothes and designs to look, I don't know, decent. And let's be honest, I don't think that this armor is in any way either aesthetically appealing or functional. I feel like if 12-year-old me saw this piece recreated in front of him at his age, I think he would have been blown away and really excited about the idea that he might end up making this. And I think it's easy for artists to sort of get down on themselves and feel like they're not good enough without actually taking the time to recognize what they have learned and where they have come, rather than just looking at what they're not yet capable of. But there is one major thing to keep in mind, of course, that there is a 15-year gap between these two images. And if you ever feel like you're not good enough yet, it's okay. Have fun with art, take your time, don't be too hard on yourself, and realize that it's a long-term relationship and you'll get to a place where you're really happy with it. And if you're not satisfied yet, don't be too hard on yourself and just try and have fun with your art. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if you have a suggestion for a future challenge or something you want me to recreate that you've seen me do before. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.
Make sure to subscribe to my channel to see more of my videos. And while you're at it, check out my shop where I sell ebooks, brushes, photo references, video courses, and more. There's another video you might enjoy from my channel over there, and you can also check out my behind the scenes daily vlog channel, Daily Jazza. That's it for now, and until next time, I'll see you later.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and today I'm going to be doing a sketchbook tour. It's not technically a sketchbook, these are individual artworks, but this is something that a lot of people have requested over a long period of time, and as many of you know, I actually launched a fundraiser only 2 days ago. For the first time, I'm selling my original artwork, which I'll be showing you through today, but I'm also selling prints of all of these artworks, which will be signed and sent out, and that's the first time and only time I'm doing both of those things, selling my original artwork and signed prints. As of recording this video, I refuse to get emotional at the start of the video. I may at the end, so let's power through this. As of recording this video, we have raised over 150% of our funding goal, which means that we will be able to make Studio number 2, and I can't say how grateful we are for that. Power through it, man! Ha! Ha! Okay! I need to get to the content of this video because this is going rapidly downhill. The beautiful thing about it is it means that we can... Oh my god! I just need to keep shouting so I can chase away the damn sissiness. I refuse to cry at the beginning of this video. This is ridiculous. The amazing thing about having passed our goal, which was beyond our wildest dreams, it means that not only will the studio get a better facelift and more space than we even initially pitched and planned for, but the content will receive a massive boost. And every single penny from the fundraiser will be going to the content and upgrading the quality of the videos and creating ambitious content that will come straight back to you. So look, I need to get to the content of this video, so I'm sorry for anyone watching this who wants me to just hurry up. So I'll just say, if you want to follow progress of the studio build or any of this exciting content being made and the future plans, make sure to follow my vlog, Daily Jazza, on YouTube, where everything is documented and shown and inclusive, and it's just a really great way for us to show our behind the scenes and how all of it is being used and put to awesome content for this channel. That being said, it's time to go through these artworks. We have 50 artworks. They sort of are roughly in the chronological order they were made in, except for number 1, which I'll bring out here. All right. I can't, this is number 1, I can't even fit it. So yeah, I have to move the microphone behind the picture so I can show you. Alright, this is piece number 1. This is an A1 piece, and many of you may recognize this from the giant 3 marker challenge. This was made with wide Copic markers. This piece has received a lot of love, and that's why we put it as number 1, and I think especially because there's obviously a vast difference in the size of the piece. You should keep in mind though that the prints of this won't be A1, they will be A4. But the original is up for grabs, so if you're super in love with it, there's that. Okay, so let's go through this. We have Harley Quinn. Now, the reason I started the collection here is because Harley Quinn was my first full Copic marker piece, and this sort of signified a change in the content of the channel, in the art, in the Let's Draws, and the character designs. Before this Harley Quinn piece, the Let's Draws sort of looked like this. I didn't spend as much time making them. I used pencils sometimes. There were a couple where I used like 1 or 2 markers. I think I used a single Copic marker here. But this was the first one I did on blending card. I think the effort I put into this piece really spoke to me and made me feel like, okay, let's do this moving forward. So it really had me up my game. This was my second ever full Copic marker piece, but I didn't actually make a video on this. This was me sort of experimenting and learning. So I was trying to play around with lighting in particular. So you can see the blue on the edge of Wolverine here, which I had fun doing. And also the light, the yellows mixing in with the skin. I was trying to see how the Copic markers sort of blend in together. This is my I Am Groot piece, where my gimmick through the whole video where I made this piece was the only words I said were I am Groot. I got so much flack for that. There was so many people complaining who were like, I had to mute it, or it was funny for like the first 10 seconds and then it was goddamn annoying. And I'm sorry to say, I'm really proud of the fact that I never broke from that. I responded to so many comments in the comment section, even the complaining ones, by saying I am Groot. I have to stick to it 100%, otherwise it's sort of a waste of a gag. This is an Ezio Assassin's Creed piece piece. This was a voted one by the Twitch chat. It was quite a lot of grays and stuff. It was my first time working with a lot of cool grays to try and create a difference between the cloth and the clothes. I think these were cold grays and these were neutral grays. This was a Rocket Raccoon piece. You'll see that some of these actually have dedications. So Groot and Rocket both have names of people. So we have Xochitl and Henry. That's because they were the people who requested the actual drawing be done. Okay, so this is another one of those pieces that was done in my own spare time, learning Copic markers. So there's not a video based on this, but again, I was trying to play with things, be ambitious, and I had just watched Big Hero 6 and loved it. So that was sort of, you know, me being inspired by Yokai, who I thought was one of the coolest, most badass looking villains ever. But again, this is my first ever Copic piece in a video that is like, and 100% every single piece of the paper is filled in with Copic marker. This is my Midna piece. I quite like the skin tones and the hair for that one. And Spyro, you can see I had a bit of fun with the colorless blender to get a little bit of a textured look for the scales. Nothing overt or too obnoxious, but I quite like that look though. And I like that thick outline look for the more cartoony pieces. Sometimes in the Let's Draw sessions, there were pieces and characters requested that I wasn't familiar with at all. And Korra was one of those. In fact, Midna was one of those as well. But it's always fun to like just take on things you don't know and create things that other people are passionate about too. This one may bear a little explaining, or maybe shouldn't be talked about at all. So these two pieces mark the beginning of the character design sessions. Now, chronologically, she came first. I believe she was my first ever character design session piece, Steampunk Rogue. And based on attributes that the Twitch chat put forward and then vote on, they picked a BDSM elf, and that's how he originated. So that's the BDSM elf and the Steampunk Rogue. Then we have the Undead Dragon. Had a lot of fun with this one, in particular with the skin and those rips and tears. It's really nice to have contrasting colors. So there's like a really bright red and then that really murky green. I also liked creating a bit of a sense of scale. So by putting the little arrows and like a sword there, you can see how big a person would be compared to him. I think without them, it would be hard to tell, but with them there, it's just like, oh damn, that thing is huge. This was another memorable piece for me. This is where I started to try and be more ambitious with individual pieces, incorporating things like backgrounds. And this sort of has multiple characters in the sense that we have the puppets of the Iron Man and Hulk, but also the detail of Ultron. And this also was created right around when the Age of Ultron movie was made. So it was sort of fun going alongside this. Okay, this piece, I will be completely honest, is my favorite. I believe that there are other pieces all throughout the rest of the Let's Draws and the character designs that are better drawn or more ambitious, but this to me was the most satisfying result from the concepts. And I also loved how involved the Twitch chat were. The idea of having someone next to him and forcing them to smile actually came from the Twitch chat, and it just turned into this amazing piece. It sounds like I'm really blowing smoke up my own ass, like, oh, it's an amazing piece, but I think it captured the way I see the Joker in my head as this completely manic lunatic, like absolutely delusionally deranged psychopath. And the Joker is one of my favorite characters. I feel like there's a clue somewhere around here to reinforce this point I'm trying to make. I quite pride myself on my Joker impression. It's been a while since I've done it, shall we?
You want to know how I got these scars? My father was a drinker and a fiend, and one night he pulls out a knife, turns it on me, and says, "Why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face!"
Thank you. Thank you. All right, moving on. Power armor, Fallout style. Oh yeah. A few people have messaged sharing that this was their favorite piece. You know, and I love Fallout. Another character design session. We have a cute, murderous clown. This piece, I think, sort of marks where I realized the power of completely turning the request on its head. The character design votes for the characteristics of this piece were sexy spider whore. My god, the Twitch chat are so ridiculous. It became obvious at certain points in streams that the Twitch chat were out to get me and corrupt the outcome of the piece and make it as difficult as possible. So this is I think where I started to really make a game and have a lot of fun with pushing the boundaries of the character design sessions, which was really cool. And this was before I made my character design book, but this sort of experience has helped shape my perspective on character design. It's almost better when you step further out into the unknown than you're comfortable with. You get things that you wouldn't have made otherwise, which this definitely is one of those things. It's also a slightly inappropriate piece. I'll sign it regardless, and we'll move on. So again, these character design sessions just went into these really interesting unknown territories. This is our Egyptian Wendigo. So based on the Wendigo mythology, we used an Egyptian aesthetic and created this, and it was all around that Anubis look as well. This is the badass Scyther, so less of a character design and more of a character redesign, I suppose you could say. It was a Let's Draw, but with a clarification that a little more edgy or realistic. This is going to be up there again with my most memorable and loved pieces. A lot of people tweet me and tweet me pictures of mine that I've recreated. This piece is the #1 most recreated piece by you guys, by the community. I get tweets of people who have redrawn the same Venom pose and picture so many times, which is so cool because it shows that people feel as excited and inspired by that badass sort of look that Venom Carnage Joker feel has. I don't know what it is. There's something visceral and interesting about that really raw, manic sort of opponent, you know. This piece was my first ever sponsored Copic art piece. This was actually a video sponsored by Ubisoft when they were launching Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I really liked the mix of those warm colors and in the grays and bringing out the light in the edges and trying to create a really solid sort of aesthetic. Aha, moving on to more character design pieces. This was our badass assassin fairy. It was an idea outside of what you would think in, you know, an assassin fairy. This was a fun one, especially all the little details like the scars that represent the kills on her arms and legs, and then also the details on the wings, those little circly things done with the white pen. Lots of fun with that. Darth Jar Jar. This was made when The Force Awakens was coming out or came out, and I had been looking up all those Darth Jar Jar theories and was really intrigued by them, and I wanted to see what Darth Jar Jar would look like. And this was a character redesign session as to what a female Link from Zelda would look like. I was really happy with the outcome, to be honest, as a hardcore Zelda fan. Here we go, Hellboy. I like having a lot of fun with like rim lighting, these light edges here, just to really make limbs and objects stand in front of each other where it makes sense. You obviously can't do it everywhere or overdo it. This was another memorable one. So this was our Apple Eye Dragon, and as far as a design process fitting the requirements and the design process itself being very interesting, a process of iteration leading to something that works, this was a really great example of that because I had to go through so many different visuals to try and find something that fit the Apple aesthetic, and we were all really happy with this. This was another character design session. This was a blind archer. Again, another example of that design process going through those very clear visual iterations. I think there were 3 or 4 sketches that I was choosing from in ways the character would be a blind archer assassin. This was one of the most viewed videos on the channel. I think it's in the top 5 or top 10, where I had 3 markers, but essentially 2.5 because one of those markers was like a C1 cool gray. So it was like barely visible. But this was in response to the first time I did the 3 marker challenge and people called me a cheater because I used a pen for. So I was like, damn it, I'll do it all again. So I did it without a pen and completely randomly generated with a little app that my coder friend made over a few days just using my markers. The result, but also the app, had a lot of people really fascinated, and this piece itself is actually the predecessor to the Arty Games app. If I hadn't this piece, there never would have been an Arty Games app, because it was from doing this and using that random generator that we build from scratch in a few days that we were like, that was really cool and people really want to use that. And then we made the Arty Games app. So there's a fascinating piece of history for you, and it's unsigned, so I'll do that now. This is a line work piece that I did as a collab with Bailey J. So she actually has a video where she colored this in, but I have the original of the line work for this. If you couldn't tell by the images that we've gone through so far, I'm not often drawn to create pretty soft pieces. I usually create more harsh, intense pieces. And I had a lot of fun doing this, and I really am happy with the outcome. Ah, yes! This piece was really fun. I wanted to make like a character mashup where I wanted to fill a page with different characters, not necessarily having anything to do with each other. And so to do that, I got, again, the Twitch chat to help me out, and they came up with a whole bunch of different characters, ideas, and after I drew one, they voted on the next one, and I drew that, then they voted on the next one, and I drew that. So I had no idea the entirety of the characters that would be in the piece until I drew the next one every wacky sort of super team that you'd just be like, what the hell? And then sort of be like, okay. Here we have our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Another example where I tried to have fun with rim lighting to help separate and create some solidity, but not just by leaving blank white space, but also adding a little bit of a golden hue, which I thought really added a cool look. It contrasted with the blue and the red of his costume. This, again, unsigned piece, now signed, was one of my more memorable character design sessions. This was a cybernetic demon. I think one of the things I loved about this piece were the effects, like the lightning around the hand and the orbs. Almost like candy, like it's just really pretty, those really rich blues and stuff. Yay, Death Note! I've said several times I'm not a huge connoisseur of anime. I'm not very familiar with even some of the more popular stuff, but there are a few I am a huge fan of. In particular, I grew up on Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, but Death was one of the ones I was introduced more to as an adult, which I just fell in love with. Another character design session. This was our scarred magician, and I loved the idea that you could cover her lower half of her face and she'd just look a bit like a crazy person, but then all of a sudden, if you cover the top half of her face, she looks like death. This was an out of the blue popular piece and also out of the blue character mashup of attributes. Ninja, cyborg, and emo. I think it's the little things that make it. It's the My Chemical jacket and the badges, you know, mixed with the purple hair, and then the obvious ninja-y, cyborgy bits, but it was just a fun character outcome, you know. I can't believe how many I didn't sign. I'm catching up with them with you today. I really enjoy the pieces where I tried to push myself to involve the outside of the character a bit more. So by creating embers and allusions to flames behind this character, I think it really added to the impact of the piece overall. This was a broken fairy assassin. I think the eyes in particular, I really wanted to make something that if you just cropped in on the face, you'd really sort of see what she was feeling, and that was a really fun challenge. This was kind of a remake. I made this version of the Hulk in a very early Let's Draw, in the very early days of doing these Let's Draw videos, and I was never happy in hindsight with the proportions. I thought it was really sort of awkward, and yet people loved the video. It was a popular video, so I thought I'd try and really challenge myself and redo it. Some people still said that they prefer the original, which is interesting because I guess it just comes down to individual taste, but for me this was a really fun challenge and almost a chance to show myself how my style and skills have changed a bit, and I was really satisfied with that, both with the anatomy and proportions and intensity of the piece, but also the color mixing was something that I never used to do. The oranges with lighting mixing against those greens, having overall lighter areas and darker areas was something I didn't do so much in the past. So I think it's a nice example of like the learning process as you challenge yourself and you try and learn new things piece by piece. Here we have our celestial mer people. Again, the glow and the lighting reflecting on the blue with contrasting against that green was a fun sort of play. Another one of my favorite character design sessions. I wonder how many times I've said my favorite. I have a lot of favorites. I liked this one because I was so in the habit with character design session videos and pieces to push myself, but the attributes for this character were only Demon Assassin, which frankly is quite vanilla. There are loads of demon assassins and there are loads of cliches that came to mind. And when I got those attributes, I thought, you know what, bugger doing something vanilla, let's push ourselves and do something really different. So I thought, rather than doing a badass male or female, buff, tanky demon assassin, I thought, let's do a crazy big lady. As a result, just the unique aesthetic that couldn't be touched with one of those cliches of a badass dude or chick. Like, speaks to stepping outside of your comfort zone, I believe. This is our Doctor Strange piece, and another example of one of those pieces that I have gotten quite a few people on Twitter. People have remade my depiction of Doctor Strange, which is really fun. In fact, someone mailed me one, but that was a fun one, and just another really cool example as to how the art and channel here on Draw with Jazza has become a community, you know, and that people have joined in on having fun with art with me, and even recreating these sort of depictions and having fun with our fandom all together, which is really cool. Another little fan piece of Big Hero 6. I gotta say, I think Big Hero 6 has, and still is, my favorite 3D animated cartoon. I can't actually think of a 3D animated cartoon that really instilled that wonderment and made me feel like a kid again watching it. And I love that feeling, you know. That's why I do this for a living, you know. This was my Beast redesign, where I recreated Beast from Beauty and the Beast, mainly because Beast in the live action Beauty and the Beast, which as of recording this video is coming out soon, or maybe just came out, I find kind of horrible. This was my badass Stitch versus badass Steven universe. I love, like, just this cropped shot of, like,
Means I'll devour you and your entire family. Gets left behind. Forgotten.
This one was fun. This was my Valentine's Day chibi depiction of Deadpool and Wolverine. I think thousands of tweets must have been sent from a result of making this piece. Thousands of people tweeting this piece to Ryan Reynolds and actually Hugh Jackman as well. I got a response from neither of them. I'm not sure why. I can't imagine why they would want to avoid responding to this in a public way. This was an interesting one because I took 4 attributes for this, and they contrasted so much that I couldn't just do a character. The requests for this were to create a sexy, post-apocalyptic ghost who used the power of love. Let me repeat that. A sexy, post-apocalyptic ghost who uses the power of love. Needless to say, I was a bit thrown and didn't know how to do that in a singular character design, but the result was actually sort of telling a story. We had a sexy character design who was, you know, torn clothing in a post-apocalyptic environment. Obviously she's a ghost, there's the transparency, and then there's a real human for comparison. Then beyond that, the power of love thing was where this scene came into play. I loved that this piece not only conveyed those 4 attributes, but actually used them and turned them from something silly into something what I think is kind of cool. So, okay, so there are 3 more on the end here. I was actually going to exclude these from the fundraiser, and in a vlog where I talked about the pieces and I was showing the pieces and I actually took these out and excluded them, people were like, oh, I would want that one, or I would want the Bob Ross, and I was like, no one would want the Bob Ross. I mean, look at this guy. Look at this guy, bloody hell. That's our chibi man bear pig. I wasn't hugely happy with how the Batman turned out, but there were people who loved it. So obviously I love you guys, and I'm going to respond to your requests and your thoughts and the things you love, and as a result I put all 3 in the fundraiser and included them in this. But that brings us to the end of our 50 favorite pieces, and these are my 50 favorite art pieces that I've made. Oh, and before I go, there actually is one more thing. This is a piece that people contacted us about and asked if this was up for grabs as a print or as an original. I didn't think about it because frankly, this was in a sketchbook and I just totally blanked, and it's one of the most, you know, refined pieces in a sketchbook. This was my Inktober challenge. A lot of people have talked about it or asked about it. Forgot to sign this one too, goddammit. All right, let's do that. So this piece will be the 51st piece. I'll add it to the list of pieces, and it will be part of that list of available prints, and of course the will be available as an original artwork. I will carefully cut it out, and it like all the other pieces will be carefully packaged out and sent to anyone who purchases that as part of the fundraiser. The love that we have received from the fundraiser and people wanting a chance to either have these for themselves or have a signed copy of them has been really touching and sort of blown me away, I think, because I tend to internally put myself down a lot and having such an overwhelming response of people lifting us up has really been incredible. As of recording this video, we've raised, oh my god, 169% of our original goal, $43,800. As you know, and as I've mentioned at the start of the video, I hesitated doing this because I tend to put myself down a bit and think, oh, no one will want it, but also because I was worried about it being a negative experience. I felt like I might have to rebuild positivity on the channel after doing a fundraiser and things like that, but the whole thing, from the moment of launching and from being in such a vulnerable, worried place, has been the singular most profoundly incredible experience on this channel and almost of my life, aside from obviously getting married and have a child. The love that has poured in from people who have given, who didn't have anything to give, and even people who couldn't give but took the opportunity to share their love with us. We have read every comment and we're trying to reply to as many as we can, but the love has been pouring in thick and fast, and all I can say is how grateful we are, we being my wife and I. I can't speak for MJ because it's too little to really read your comments, but he feels the love, and he's met some of you too. I probably shouldn't drag on too much because I never feel like I can say thank you enough. There is a month on the fundraiser left. We actually can't bring that train to a halt, and to be honest, I don't want to, because people still want this stuff. There are people who are saying, oh, get my pay coming in on Thursday, oh, I really want an ab one, and it's like, absolutely. And so this has turned from something that we were hoping to use as a platform to get closer to reaching a dream, which was to make better stuff, to make better content. And in response to that, an entire community has turned into a crowd of people cheering us on. It feels like with us plucking up the courage to say, hey, we want to make better stuff, can you help us? Everyone like attacked us with love and said, yes, but make it even better than you want to make it. And it's like a Christmas miracle without the Christmas. So all I can say is thank you. And let me just say that every single penny over the goal that was raised, including the goal, of course, will go to making the studio even better. We immediately today, especially after the results of yesterday, we contacted our builder and we're already talking about ways that we can make the space more efficient and better. So we're going to have more room to make better stuff in that space. And then beyond that, everything that is raised that is on top of the goal that we established and that doesn't go towards the studio itself will be put to projects and supplies for content for the channel, will be put to equipment that will make the viewing experience better for you. Every single cent and every single donation is so gratefully received and is sacred to us and will be treated with integrity and respect and for the love that it was given to us with. So I can't thank everyone who donated enough. I can't thank anyone who considers donating or does donate in future enough for the impact that that will and does have on this channel and this community and my family. So thank you. Grunt away the tears. Once again, if you want to follow the whole process, go over to my vlog. We can't wait to share every step of the adventure with you. And by the way, when all of this wraps up and when the fundraiser is finished, we're going to be putting like a Google Doc together that anyone in or outside of the fundraiser can access and see the projects that we're putting the money towards.
colors I can use. Yikes, this is so hard. Shapes. Paint 3D. Of course it's Paint 3D. This is not Photoshop. Alright. That would make sense. Well, for the people who joined, thank you for coming, and thank you for watching this late stream for the comic. I hope you enjoyed this little Valentine's Day comic, and hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys later in the next animation or comic or whatever I do. See ya.